So by extrapolating from current realities, the dystopia's didactic nature encourages ideas about alternative or even better ways of living, and invites readers to challenge ideologies that have become natural to them. Going beyond such readings, this paper argues that the treatment of female bodies in dystopian worlds reveals more than the ways in which female bodies are subjugated in society. It also reacts to a shift that has taken place, according to Stieg A. Norstedt, in Western societies. It is the shift from risk to threat society. Norstedt, he argued that the global war on terror has resulted in a shift, and environmental concerns such as climate change have caused risk society as a society that is afraid of its own powers to transform into a threat society, into being afraid of the others. In order to trace how the development from risk to threat society is represented in dystopias through the subjugation of female reproductive bodies, Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale will be compared with Amy Ewing's The Lone City series. In this way, the paper will demonstrate how dystopian literature can offer counter-narratives to fears concerning female bodies and hence present a way out of the constraints of both risk and threat societies. Pregnancy transforms female bodies into public spaces. As Iris Marion Young argues, pregnancy does not belong to the woman herself. It is a state of the developing fetus for which the woman is a container, or it is an objective, observable process coming under scientific scrutiny, or it becomes objectified by the woman herself as a condition in which she must take care of herself. This has significant political implications, since with their pregnancy, women seem to lose their right to decide about their bodies on their own. The pressure to take care of oneself for the sake of one's child turns women into clients in need of help and medical advice. Medical observation is thereby often privileged over the female experience of pregnancy, so that female bodies have become almost transparent in the discursive construction of pregnancy. Female sensory perception is reduced in value, while female bodies are frequently understood as biospheres that are endangering fetuses. Debates concerned with the availability of abortion in particular continue to show that the law has no place for a pregnant woman as an autonomous person with rights, and that the right to bodily integrity is superseded by her public designation as an incubator of new citizens. As a result, the unborn fetus is regarded as disembodied from the maternal body, so that the mother does not possess the right to decide about it. The life of the fetus is valued over the life of the woman bearing it. In this disembodiment, Barbara Duden claims women are constructed as a site of hierophany, since society has put an idol into their wombs, of which they are no part, but which they have to cherish as a wonder. Pregnant bodies thus waver between conditions of visibility and absolute invisibility. On the one hand, the pregnant body is a body made public with all its processes being supervised and debated about in public, while on the other, its value seems to stem from being a container for children, so that it is not entitled to have rights on its own. This again naturalizes the legitimacy of the public control of women's bodies. Reproductive technologies such as ultrasound, fetal monitors, and antenatal testing procedures are frequently used to create subject positions. For instance, infertile, surrogate, and genetically impaired mothers, mothers whose bodies are not fit for pregnancy, either biologically or socially, mothers who are psychologically unfit for fertility treatments, mothers whose wombs are hostile environments to fetuses, mothers who are deemed negligent for not choosing to undergo tests, or genetically deficient fetuses, or consent to cesarean sections. As these medical disciplines isolate specific types of abnormality or deviancy, they construct new norms of healthy and responsible motherhood, as Savicki explains. These subject positions not only invite women to accept normalizing definitions and rules, they also encourage women to become self-policing in order to conform to the norm. Totalitarian societies like the ones depicted in Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale and Amy Ewing's The Lone City series foreground and reflect critically on how fertile female bodies are both strengthened for their purpose as childbearers and weakened in terms of autonomy in society. Margaret Atwood's dystopia, The Handmaid's Tale, was published in 1985 a theocratic society in which women have been enslaved to serve their country as child-bearers. It is set in the former United States, now called the Republic of Gilead, and mirrors aspects of Ulrich Beck's Risk Society. According to Beck, the Risk Society is shaped by conflicts and problems which are produced by technological progress and industrialization, so that the unknown and unintended consequences come to be a dominant force in history and society. By risks, he means above all radioactivity, which completely evades human perceptive abilities, but also toxins and pollutants in the air, the water and foodstuff, together with the accompanying short and long-term effects on plants, animals, and people. The Handmaid's Tale also confronts its readers with a society shaped by the long-term effects of industrialization. Quote, the air got too full once of chemicals, rays, radiation, the water swarmed with toxic molecules. All of that takes years to clean up, and meanwhile they creep into your body, camp out in your fatty cells. This results in a constantly declining birth rate, which is indeed the main reason for the so-called sons of Jacob to take over the country and to change its social structures by subjecting female bodies to Gilead's need for procreation. This subjugation is, however, not only due to the falling birth rates per se, but also to the effects the ecological changes have on fertile female bodies. In the novel, pollution and radiation are also leading to the births of so-called unbabies. Quote, what will off-foreign give birth to? A baby, as we all hope? Or something else, an unbaby with a pinhead or a snout like a dog's, or two bodies, or a hole in its heart, or no arms, or webbed hands and feet? There's no telling. They could tell once with machines, but that is now outlawed. Who knows, your very flesh may be polluted, dirty as an oily beach, sure death to shore birds and unborn babies. Maybe a vulture would die of eating you. Maybe you light up in the dark like an old-fashioned watch. Yet women are indeed not only perceived as victims of the risks caused by ecological disaster, but also as the carriers of these risks. In Gilead, infertility, infanticides, and malformed fetuses are not attributed to both men and women, but only to defective female bodies. Quote, there's no such thing as a sterile man anymore. Not officially. There are only women who are fruitful and women who are barren. That's the law. This mirrors ideas surrounding female bodies in Western societies. Just as in the novel, infertility is often considered to be a problem that is located in the individual, which according to Jana Zawicki deflects attention and energy that could be used to address the environmental causes of infertility. But instead of focusing on solutions for the environmental changes, female bodies are commodified and constructed as risk carriers. This objectification discredits women's autonomy and the value of their experiences. This is also made explicit in Offred's monthly medical checkups. As you can see in the graphic novel that accompanies the book, a sheet at neck level veils Offred's face so that the doctor deals with the torso only. The usage of the sheet thereby underlines the reduction of women to their bodies, since it epitomizes female mindlessness, which is reminiscent of pictures in pregnancy manuals. They frequently also only depict the torso of female bodies and thereby literally decapitate women. Moreover, the construction of the victim role is manifold in The Handmaid's Tale, which is another development featured in risk societies. Beck argues that risks caused by modernization have a boomerang effect. They also strike those who produce or profit from them. He agrees with the idea that social risk positions, which follow the inequalities of class, emerge in risk societies, since some people might be more affected than others by the distribution of risks. Still, he argues that they bring a fundamentally different distributional logic into play. Infertility, stillbirths, miscarriages, and genetic deformities or ethnicity. Serena Joy, although occupying a superior power position by having an upper-class status, is dependent on her handmaid and suffers from her infertility and the lack of power resulting from it. Thus, like Beck's Risk Society, Atwood's dystopia shows that the aftermath of modernization affects also those people who used to profit from modernization in the first place. So you can see here that she's not amused about the fact that her husband has to impregnate her handmaid, and she has to accompany this procedure. As Madeline Davies observes, Atwood's fictional female bodies become battlefields where anxieties relating to wider power structures are written onto female flesh. Thus, in both the novel and Beck's Risk Society, one is no longer concerned with attaining something good, but rather with preventing the worst. Self-limitation is the goal which emerges. This pessimism in Risk Society, he asserts, is based in part on a general loss of confidence and on the existence of so-called risk multipliers. In The Handmaid's Tale, the sons of Jacob attempt to eliminate all of the risk multipliers, and as such, practices and diseases which cause infertility and childlessness. These entail the abolishment of birth control, abortions, as well as the elimination of R-strain syphilis and AIDS. In order to banish sexually transmitted diseases, extramarital sex is considered a crime, except for the sexual intercourse with handmaids, of course. Besides, since abortions and birth control are forbidden, doctors and women who have committed these crimes are punished with death sentences and the public exposure of their bodies. The methods used by Gilead in order to create a sense of safety furthermore allude to the rise of the religious right in the 1980s, the era of Reagan and the conservative backlash, which wanted to legally impose family morality with their pro-family program by making abortions and some forms of birth control illegal. With her dystopian novel, Atwood discusses this trend and radically plays through its consequences. In doing so, she protests the deep contradiction in pro-life ideology and Christian patriarchy, which treats women's bodies as passive vessels, yet holds women morally responsible for what becomes of fetuses and children. The conservative backlash is also criticized by Beck, who argues that from pornography and legalized abortion to feminism, everything is blamed for the crisis of the family, and that in the risk society, appropriate countermeasures are demanded. He thereby points out that anyone who would really restore the nuclear family in the form of the 50s must turn back the clock of modernization. That means displacing women from the labor market, not just covertly, through subsidies of motherhood, for instance, or by polishing up the image of housekeeping, but openly, and not just from the labor market, but from education as well. And that is exactly what happens to women in Atwood's novel. In order to force women to go and stay at home as mothers and housewives, the credit cards are cancelled, and with it the right to own property and to gain money at work. As Atwood claims, by reversing each of the various steps that have been taken in the direction of more freedom for women over the past 100 years, the government wanted to ensure that women would be back at their homes because they would have no other place to go. As Atwood herself notes, the way women are treated in society determines the shape of the society. And since, according to Coral and Howells, Atwood insists on writing speculative fiction, which rehearses possible futures on the basis of historical and contemporary evidence, it can be claimed that The Handmaid's Tale can be read as a warning against Beck's risk society. Just like Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, the Lone City series presents a world in which fertile women are enslaved in order to bear children for the upper class. Encompassing 3 novels, the dystopian story written by Amy Ewing focuses on the experiences of 16-year-old who has to serve the Duchess of the Lake as a surrogate and starts to rebel against the political structures of her city in the course of the plot. The way female bodies are portrayed and subjected by the aristocracy reflects aspects of the threat society according to Stieg A. Norstedt, which is constructed as an expansion of Beck's risk society. He claims that due to an expansion of the culture of fear, the constant feeling of insecurity that characterizes risk society has transformed into a general awareness of insecure conditions that results in a growing distrust among human beings. Thus, threat society is marked by an emerging perception of one's fellow human being as a potential threat, as the others. Consequently, whereas in Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, women are subjected because in the wake of ecological disaster, birth rates have declined, in Ewing's dystopia, young women are enslaved as surrogates because the upper classes are terrified by their natural powers, the so-called auguries. The fear of the surrogate's abilities dominates the world of the dystopia to such an extent that it has become the most important aspect of its political agenda, which also reflects the concept of threat politics as defined by Norstedt. Quote, an emergent culture of fear paves the way for threat politics, which in turn encourage a new social formation, a threat society in which the continuous and changeable threats, together with the problem of how they should be managed, become the overriding rationality and the precondition for legitimately exercising power. In the Lone City series, all actions and rules are legitimized by fear. The underlying idea of surrogacy is not only to enslave the young women possessing superhuman powers, but to furthermore eradicate their group in doing so, since surrogacy is a death sentence for girls. They die after they have given birth to the royal babies. Quote, "We aren't sure why bearing a royal child causes death. Maybe it's the auguries. Maybe it's because we were never meant to carry children besides our own. Whatever it is, we are only a means to an end for them. These actions are tolerated by society since nobody cares for the disappearance of surrogates, which shows that royalty has successfully ostracized them from society. This again exemplifies that the lone city functions like a threat society, which is based on an imagined community to which surrogates do not belong." With reference to Neustadt, the discourse of fear appeals to audiences, the public, via the construction of a special identity, which includes one part of the population in the imagined community at the same time as it excludes the others. As a consequence and tradition of dystopian literature, the Lone City series reveals the anxieties of its time and shows how easily irrational fears can lead to the disappearance of justice and humanity. The dehumanization of adolescent girls can also be understood as a critique of undisputed acceptances of discriminating discourses as it exists in threat societies. Quote, "In threat society, there are trends that work as undercurrents, channeling opinions towards accepting violations of human rights and international laws for the sake of security. The culture of fear has a firm grip on popular culture, mediatized discourses and people's minds, and is exploited for threat policies based upon speculative threat images, together with public appeals for patriotism and trust in the leaders in difficult times. This encourages readers of the dystopia to attribute importance to their own perception of the world and has the potential of enabling them to assess their society's discourses of fear critically. With its construction of threat images, its strategies of othering surrogates, and its exploitation of people's fears to legitimize oppression, the dystopian system in Ewing's novels can be read as an example of Neustadt's threat society, and Violet's victory over it as demonstrating a way of opposing such a system. Presented, oppressed, and instrumentalized female bodies can be taken to reveal how female bodies are subjugated in our society. Specifically, The Handmaid's Tale criticizes how a climate of fear caused by environmental catastrophe is used to legitimize female enslavement and thereby challenges risk society's handling of society's anxieties. At the same time, by demonstrating how discriminatory discourses about female bodies are constructed and then exploited by hegemonic systems, the Lone City series attacks the instrumentalization of human fears for political purposes and thus challenges mechanisms of threat societies. In keeping with the genre's typical aims, the dystopia invites readers to empathize with the protagonists and thereby condemn those aspects of society that result in the oppression of women. Exposing the mechanisms that exploit society's fears in a defamiliarized setting might therefore help readers to see through the workings of their culture more clearly. As Susan Louise Stewart notes, meaningful and successful novels of dystopia won't let us forget them, they haunt us. And since she's right, I guess, it can be hoped that readers of dystopian fiction recognize the unique powers of female reproductive bodies and the women inhabiting them.